What's going on, world? It's your boy at Big Game James _36. And this is some special BS that we're going to come up with today. I'm a special big show. I know a lot of you guys are like, what the hell are you guys doing at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? But there's sometimes where I told you guys I like to do the interviews. I like to do a different type of interview as well. A lot of people just call. They have this list of questions, and it's just not – it's not organic. It's not cool at all. I like to get to know people, and basically you get a FaceTime. You get to see me have a FaceTime conversation with some of the more famous people in the world, and a lot of you guys may know, you may not know, but I get to do a lot of cool shit, and through that I get to meet cool people, and through that I get to know the cool people that the cool people know. And when I was in Vegas, was interacting and catching up, especially with my Florida State brotherhood and fan base. And the funny story is this old white lady approached me, and she just said, "You look like you know how to fight." And I told her I like violence. And then she goes on all of this stuff, and she's like, she knows Dana White. Why are you here? I'm like, I cover the NFL. And she's like, well, you should do an interview with Dana White. I'm like, listen, bitch, if you can make this happen, fine. I don't know. Like, one of my life is take people for what their word is, and then they're full of shit. They're full of shit. And my buddy who chooses to remain nameless was there and says, you know what? I probably can get you as close to Dana White as you can, but would you like to interview one of the top trainers in MMA? And I said, well, is a pig's pussy pork? And he brought up Francis Ngannou, and I'm like, hell yeah, I want to meet Francis Ngannou. Like, he's cool as shit. Like, I was like, one, he's violent. Two, he just seems like a great person outside of when he punches people in the face. And I would love to meet him or the people who are associated with him. So he brought up Eric, and Eric's got an awesome last name, Nixick. And it's like, it just sounds sick. But we're gonna chop it up, and we're gonna have some questions. So for my guys who are fans of mixed martial arts and my guys who are fans of boxing, this would be a great opportunity for you to go tell some people, come on over, let's ask some questions. I'm going to take anybody's questions in the comments as long as they're within reason. And as we're going through this journey of how Eric got to this position, who he is, again, it's a lot of very interesting things. And I think the cool thing about sports is that everybody has a story, and everybody's stories are similar. It's so much more fun than, how do you train somebody? What's the mindset? Like, they got y'all like those reporters when they wear the ties, and I like violence. My mother told me she knew it was something crazy when she forced me to fight because I didn't want to fight the kid. He tore my Oshkosh Bagosh overalls, and my mom was mad at me, and she says, well, what does his overalls look like? And I said, I don't know. She took me by my big ass ears then and drugged me there. And then she said she created a monster because I beat the shit out of the kid because my mom told me I had to, or she was going to beat me. And she said the smile that was on my face when I was fighting, like she said, it looked like it brought you joy. And when I played football, I liked hitting people because it brought me joy. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guy, Eric. And Eric's rocking the Seminole cap. So, yes, he is a Seminole.
Man, bro, I'm so pumped to be here, dude. Like, I started catching on to your podcast when, they screwed us out of the BCS playoffs, man. And I started seeing a lot of your stuff, and I started following it. And I was like, man, I've always been a big fan of yours, especially just from the fullback position. And then, seeing that your heart and soul is still bleeding, garnet and gold. And you going out and making a ruckus for these poor guys in this last season, not making the playoffs, man. So, honored to be on, man. Honored to talk to a Seminole, and let's chop it up.
Definitely. What we're gonna do too, I'm gonna get your address. One, I want a couture versus everybody sweatshirt.
Automatic.
Look cool. I'm going to send you an MF, so I have a brand / it's my nonprofit. It means two things. These letters mean two things. MFTK means mentors for the kids. But it's also, you have kids?
3 kids, yep.
Do you have Oh, I know you said this at one point, and you say it in love, but they do something to you, and it just, man, fuck them kids, man. It just makes you whisper it. It rolls off your tongue. But we have this saying with my channel, MFTK, man, fuck them kids, and it doesn't. It's we like these kids, but them kids out there, we don't know we don't like them kids. But I'm gonna send you a FSU one, so Garnet and Gold one, so that you can have that.
I love it. Yep.
All right, man. So
as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So we'll go all over the place. So it won't just be a chronological thing, but we'll start off with you own a gym, and it's not a traditional gym. It's a gym where you just train MMA athletes. How does that work? What is that like?
Yeah, so we opened Extreme Couture in 2006. We're Randy Couture's gym. We're actually open to regular members, and that's kind of how I started off at this gym. Was, you know, I was done playing football. I think as many of us when we're former athletes, once we're done playing a sport, or it's the camaraderie that we miss. It's the team, the locker rooms, the you know, the trash talk, the road trips. Those are the things I think we end up missing the most, and that's where I felt like my life was, man. I felt like I was searching for something that I needed, and I stumbled across this gym. I started training under Randy Couture and some of the fighters that we had here at the time. And Randy was getting ready to fight Tim Sylvia. It was his comeback fight. He actually won that fight. He's a huge underdog, and he became the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. And that was really the start of my journey, James. I've never left. I really felt the love and the passion, the camaraderie that I needed, that I felt like I was yearning for. And, over the years, man, I started to learn more and more from Randy and the other coaches here. Got a coaching position here. Took over as the gym manager almost 11 years ago. Now been here for almost 18 years now, man. So it's been a long journey.
So with that, is it like it's not weights, or is it just you're actually training them in the mixed martial arts? Kind of go through that. What is that like?
Yeah, sure, man. We started this gym. It was a 12,000 square foot facility. We just had a boxing ring. We had an octagon. We had some mat space. And that was it. It was like you said, it was a bunch of alphas coming in here and just, training, sparring. And then as the gym grew, it became more and more members. At one point, we'll have 700-800 members, and those are 9-to-5ers. Those are people coming in, just they want to train, they want to stay in shape. We ended up expanding the gym over and making it bigger. So now we're a 24,000 square foot facility. I invested in a weight room. We have turf. We can do a lot of strength and conditioning in here. We wanted to design the gym to make it a point where, fighters didn't have to travel all around to go and get the work that they need. They can have a one-stop shop. They can do S&C in here. They can train. They can spar. Everything can get done. And that's our gym right now, man. We have a lot of members, and we have kids program. The gym is flourishing, but the real meat and potatoes are our pro fighters, the guys that you see in the UFC. And we have a lot of champions here and a lot of well-known fighters.
So what is it like training a championship fighter, man? Like, that's got to be like, what's the mindset of that? That's got to be pretty intense, right?
Yeah, it can be, and I think everyone's different. I think that as a as a coach in MMA, I like to think of myself as a quarterback on the football team. You can't talk to everybody the same way. Everyone needs different attention. Everybody needs different motivation. You have to learn how to speak to certain individuals to get the best out of them. But when you're coaching a championship fight or a championship caliber fighter, there's a lot of attentiveness. I think you have to understand who and what they are and what they need, what they fight for. Putting together a training camp is almost like putting together a week of football and putting together a game plan and everything else, watching a lot of tape. I think that was one of the biggest things for me when I came over to MMA. A lot of guys didn't do, man. That was tape study. And as you know, bro, that's a lot of our week is breaking down film and watching tape and looking for tendencies. So that was one of the things I feel like I had an upper hand on the moment I came over from football into MMA was really the tape study. So I brought that over a lot. And, I think our guys are kind of keen on understanding, looking at patterns, looking at tendencies and how we can exploit those things. So most of my camps are really hands-on, individual basis. And then we'll have our team practices with sparring and certain things like that. But we have about 60 pro fighters here at Extreme Couture, so we're constantly busy.
All right, we're going to get into that too, because I'm interested, especially when you brought up the film study and the strength conditioning, because I do want to know. My original profession was performance training, so I kind of I like to nerd out on that kind of shit, like to know about like those kind of things. But let's go back to you. Like, so what is your athletic background? Like, what got you? Like, it's like, what was your passion? Like, what obviously like football. So, was football one of those things?
It was football, man. I'm born in a household full of football coaches. My dad, my uncle. I had actually two uncles that were coaches. So growing up, I just really grew up on the football field, going to practices, doing everything firsthand with my dad. A lot of time, like quality time I got to spend with my dad was, times he was breaking down film or watching tape. So to keep me busy, he would sit there with this big old yellow notebook pad and I would chart plays with him. He's a defensive coordinator. So I sit there and chart plays or write stuff down. And I think being that young and starting to learn and understand the aspect of football from a student perspective really helped blossom me into the athlete that I was, so going through high school, I got brought up to varsity as a freshman, played sophomore all the way up through senior year. I was first team all-state wide receiver here in Nevada. Went on to go to University of Nevada, Reno. Got a little trouble up there, decided to transfer out of school and went to Dixie Junior College, played there for a few years, and then finished up, came back home to UNLV. So once that was done, man, I think that was like a lot of us athletes is like, man, what's next? What do you do from here? I knew I wasn't going to be an NFL talent, but I think a lot of the things that I learned from football helped develop me into the man that I am today. So a lot of those things I'm able to take over into MMA, and it's cool now because my lineage of through the coaches that I have, their ideologies and some of the things they've taught me are now crossing over to a different demographic. So, my wide receiver coach from college will hit me up, and I'll send them some stuff and, just seeing how proud they are to see a former athlete of theirs in a whole different genre of sport.
Yeah, so like that discipline in football and the structure and the rigorousness. And again, coming from a dad who's sitting there, so you talking about film study, like your dad was watching that old school film too. Like they had the actual reel where you had to like put that thing in there.
Yep. The old school reels, the VHS tapes when you go trade out the VHS with the opposing coach, for that Sunday or Saturday after practice or after, your walkthrough from the game before from Friday night, I'd hop in the car and go with my dad and go get the tape from the opposing coach. Yeah, man, that was the good old days.
Yeah, I told a kid that and they couldn't fathom that. I was like, yeah, man, people used to have to drive and meet halfway, like especially if it was out of town team from quite a little distance. You would have to go meet them somewhere at a gas station, and there wasn't any texting. Like, which is ironic, like how much everybody was more prompt with less communication. Like I would have to call you, I'm leaving, and you can't talk to that person until you see them, but somehow you always met at the right time.
Right. Yeah.
But like now, you got a cell phone, you can text people, you got GPS, people are always late. Nobody ever tells you that, hey, I'm lost or something like that. But that's interesting. So, but I'm not gonna let you gloss over a little tidbit. You said you got in a little bit of trouble. What is a little bit of trouble to get you in to make you transfer from out of your college?
Well, kind of like you were talking about in your promo, I like to fight a lot. I got into a lot of skirmishes and a lot of fist fights. I was a hot-headed redheaded kid, just a ginger boy that was down to scrap, So, and then it got to the point where, it was almost kind of a sport for me. And especially like in college, it was like, oh, this guy looked at you funny, or this guy said something funny, and the drop of the hat, you were throwing hands just because of the mentality, thinking back of it, we just weren't really the most mature group of guys. And, so we got a lot of fights. Well, by doing so, the target was on your back by administrators and coaches, and hey, man, you got to calm down. You can't be doing this kind of thing. And then he started mixing in the party. You get a bunch of dumb kids that are underage drinkers and doing dumb stuff. And, I was a product of that. And unfortunately, I paid a price for it. I got thrown in jail. I got kicked out of school, so all those things ended up it was a big big reason why I didn't get hired on by a fire department here locally, because of fighting and trouble because of my past. And that stuff comes up to bite you in the ass, So for any of those young kids out there, they're making crazy, silly decisions. By the time I was 26, 27 years old, a decision that I made when I was 18 ended up costing me a career on the fire service, So that's kind of why I am who I am today.
As I tell a lot of kids that I mentor, you are like where you're at is the sum total of the choices that you've made in decisions. So like, is it worth it? Which is even one of the other jokes I tell people listen to my show or follow me. I'm like, if you ever see me get in a fight, I'm getting my money's worth. Because I know it's not gonna like something bad is like something bad is gonna happen. So I might as well take it. But like the goal is now is definitely not to fight. Especially because I forgot what comedian made the joke. There's these guys you're training that are out there. I'm terrified of those guys. I am terrified of finding some regular average Joe that I try to throw a punch at and I miss, and all of a sudden I don't know where the hell I'm at. I'm in a cross-faced chicken wing, or I'm getting choked out,
or something like that. Me down, bro. That's definitely calmed me down too. And coming to this gym and knowing like, oh, dude, you are not the baddest dude on the planet. There are some dudes out there that would mess you up. So yeah, it definitely helps me out a ton.
So you actually train one of the guys who, even though it's funny. One of the things about boxing, they always say styles make fights. I was so impressed when he fought. Now I can't think of his name.
Tyson Fury.
When he fought Fury, like I actually was one of the guys. I'm like, yo, he's scoring points on Fury, man. But then he fought Joshua. Joshua's a little bit different, a different style. But what is it like training Francis, and how did that come about?
I started training Francis. This was right after his Derek Lewis fight. He lost a close decision, just looked flat. He ended up moving over to Extreme Couture, started training him. He started training at the gym after that. And then I think he won 4 in a row. I started cornering him for the Junior Dos Santos fight. Then we had Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Then we had Stipe. Then we fought Cyril Gane. So we won this. We won our title fighting Stipe, and that was a rematch. Stipe fought him earlier in his career. He was training. He was training out of a gym in France. And then, when I was able to start training him, man, it was one of those things. We sat down and just kind of went over. Hey, what are you afraid of? Like, what are things you that we need to work on? What are things that we can get better at? And it really came down to accountability, James. It was like, I know you can knock anybody out once you put your hands on them, but this is MMA. There's other facets of this game that we're going to have to cover. And he was all for, man. He went all in when we got together, and that's, I think, ultimately what helped him win a title was just his relentlessness to become better in all these areas of MMA that he just wasn't really focusing on as much. And as rough as the pandemic was for many people, to me, the pandemic brought a lot of perspective, and it was allowed me to be able to work with Francis more on a one-on-one basis. And, we would get in the gym and really there was no one in here. The gym was closed. I had a key and hey, let's go work on things. Let's go train. Randy Couture would come in and help him with some stuff, and myself and other teammates. And during that time, man, he made huge leaps and bounds and being more successful into the mixed martial artist he is today. And, that was really, to me, what helped him win not only against Stipe Miocic, but help him win the fight against Cyril Gane.
Well, this kind of goes into a question that my friend George, who runs another Seminole page on the Renegade Report. But when you're training, is it better to have a different coach for each discipline, or is everything really becoming training just MMA together? Like, do you need to have a boxing specific? Do you need to have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or any of those different things? Or like, how do you kind of go about all of those different things?
That's a great question. Initially when I'd say 10, 15 years ago, a lot of times you're going to have specialty coaches, and each guy's going to have you're going to have your grappling coach, your jiu-jitsu coach, your wrestling coach, your boxing coach, and then maybe your head coach. But what I found during that time was I didn't want to be labeled as a specialty coach. I wanted to be able to go and travel on the road or go corner a fighter and be able to do everything from the feet to the floor, all the way to be able to wrap my fighter's hands, hold the pads for him, wrestle with them, and do everything, because it became cost effective. It's very, these guys don't make a whole lot of money. So when you go on the road and you travel and now you're resourcing out 3 or 4 different coaches, then there's 3 or 4 different personalities. Those are 3 or 4 mouths you got to feed, and you got to put them up. They got to travel. They got to buy their plane tickets and all these things. I found a gap there where I was like, man, I can be better for these fighters if I can learn it all and be a resource for them. Now, to this day, there's still guys that, they bring on, a specialty black belt coach, but I think it's moreover for fine tuning things. I'm not a specialist anywhere, but I feel like I can cover my bases as much as possible. And I think that, adding more depth to your coaching ability just is going to add more value to who you are, to your fighters. So it's really depicted on the fighter and the camp that they're at. But for us here, man, I think all of our coaches are considered MMA coaches, and we can do it all.
Gotcha. So you guys don't just have, obviously, heavyweights. You train all the different weight classes, including women. You had a female champion as well, correct?
Yeah, Misha Tate, one of our female champs. Yeah, she beat Holly Holm after Holly knocked out Ronda Rousey. Misha fought her, and Misha choked her out in the 5th round. So yeah, we have female fighters in here, champions in the female division. Really, really good fighters from all different weight classes. Yeah, I mean, anywhere from the flyweight division all the way up to the heavyweight division, we have it all.
I had a question about that too. Like, so, Ronda Rousey, I'm not even I'll forget all the other things. It was something crazy. She went on some show and she was talking about Holly Holm. And she said, well, the only thing Holly Holm is going to try to do is woo, woo, woo. And she's going to try to catch me with the kick. And that's ended up, if I remember correctly, that's how she knocked her out. Like, when you're like, is that like, that's not like, if you know what somebody's going to do, like, you don't want your fighter to get knocked out by what we know what they're going to do, right?
Yeah, that's the idea, and you also don't want to put it out in the universe. You know what I mean? If you think it, don't say it. Don't put it out there.
That part.
Yeah, I think that, Ronda was in a time where she was so dominant that the way that she was beating everybody, I think that some of her, the mental side of things was, she could just show up, roll it out and win no matter what. It's like when you watch the teams that come up and beat, Florida State team that should never, Jacksonville State or whatever,
Sure.
They should never even come close to beating us. But I think sometimes you forget about that. We have to show up and play the game, and so we have to show up and fight the fight. I tell people records are for DJs, man. Don't look at those records. You get lost in those things. So, fight and play just as if that they're the number one team in the nation, or they're the champion.
It's having respect for your opponent, regardless of how good or how bad they are. You have to treat everybody as if they're the champion, and then everything kind of takes care of itself. But man, that was actually takes me right into what I wanted to ask you about. Like, what are some similarities between MMA and any sport, but I would say football in particular, seeing as you played it? You come from a history of coaching it, and now you coach MMA. But what are some parallels that you see in the two sports?
The biggest parallel that I see is that although we're an individual sport, once the cage door closes, we're only as good as the team we surround ourselves with. And with that being said, even in the sparring too, James, like, there's an ecosystem here. The way I look at it is kind of like a scout team on offense or defense. We need those guys. We need those bodies. We need those people to be able to push us and keep us accountable and keep us honest. Whereas in the gym, in the same concept, there are fighters in here that might not ever make it to the UFC. They might be more of a journeyman type fighter, but they're equally as important to us for their roles, because if in the ecosystem of what we do, if our UFC guys are great white sharks, these guys might be the tuna. Well, the great whites need somebody to eat. They needed somebody to eat rather than, always going against each other. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the ecosystem that I see a lot of times when it comes to the training goes. Yeah, once the cage door closes, man, it's you versus them, and that's going to be the the preparation leading up to. But you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with, man. And that to me was the biggest importance, was getting these men and women to understand that we're not an individual sport. We are a team sport.
That's definitely difficult. What is it? So when you're watching film of fighters, what are we looking for? What is it like? Like what is actually, because I'm gonna have a segment called mansplaining. And we may take this and use this for women. It's me explaining football to women, even though most men don't know shit about football either. So they'll probably watch too. But what is a tendency, and what does a tendency look like in MMA? And how do you find it? And how do you communicate that? If you can give me an example.
Sure. I like to look at defensive flaws, especially off of their offense. So, for example, let's say if I'm throwing a jab, but when I throw my jab, my right hand is in my pocket or my right hand is down. I can see the jab. I understand what the jab is, the offensive thing that's there, but I want to look for the defensive flaw. What can I exploit in the defense that maybe, okay, when he throws his jab, well, I can throw this type of hook over top of it, or I can slip to the inside and throw my overhand. So once something is offered, does it ring true over and over with a tendency throughout the fight? Then I'll go back and maybe watch their second to last fight or the third fight and see, like, okay, is this a habit? Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? And those things. And then if it is, then I can implement it into a game plan. Hey, this guy tends to do this over and over and over again. So when the fight starts, then that's something that we'll look for right away. Almost like if you had your play chart for your first, scripted plays. Mm-hmm. All right, we're gonna do this to see if what we thought on film comes to action. Okay, great. This is what he does, and this is how we see it. So, for example, one of my fighters, Dan Ige, he fought Andre Fili. This is a couple months back. We always notice that Andre Fili will drift towards the power hand side every time he jabs. But when he does it, his hands will come down and they'll drift right into the power hand side. So as the round started, Dan was flicking his jab. Fili started drifting that way, flicked it, and all I yelled at him was, hey, read the drift. Which way is he drifting? Once Dan understood what I was saying, what I was looking for, he has a whole bunch of things he can apply there. But he did the ultimate was the big overhand right and put the dude to sleep with about a minute in the right in the fight, about a minute in the fight. Drift over to the power hand side, drifted the wrong way. Dan walked him right in the right hand and slept him.
That's crazy that you just described it like that. I would have never, so what we're going to see one day is MMA fights. We're going to see big ass call sheets like this. It says he's drifted right. You gotta.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Run the counter left.
That's your offensive coordinator in the press box, right? Like you got a guy up there and he's the eye in the sky, but you're looking for those tendencies. And what you're doing really, James, is we're collecting data. We're collecting data on what we can read and what we can show. On the flip side of that, now here's to me where the art comes in, is you got to break yourself down. You got to watch your own tape. You got to go back and see what tendencies you're showing and things you might be doing wrong. They might be trying to game plan for it against, and how do we cover that hole up, right? Okay, we got a bad corner on the boundary side. They're probably going to attack this side, so let's roll a safety over, right? How do you help and how do you disguise? And maybe there's something that we're not doing as well that this guy is very, very good at. How do you cover up that hole as well, which is equally as important, I think, when you put a game plan together.
Yeah, that takes a level of accountability and humility, especially with a fight, especially when you get to – because I have to assume that they've got to feel like they have to go into the cage with the air of invincibility or feeling like I can knock out anybody. But to know that, okay, here's what I'm not good at, I have to listen to somebody. So I don't, especially in today's day and age. I see it with athletes on the football field. They get shook when they get beat. And I'm like, dude, it's the game. You're supposed to get beat. Nobody's undefeated every play. But what happens is they take this one little clip and you have to see it over and over and over and over again. Has that presented a challenge in training fighters? Because when you fight, we all see the thing. I even have I call it hit them with the M's. with my IG is like I'm quick to take somebody who got knocked out and put some gospel music behind it and talk about there's you can see Christ in violence in the violence, but like how do you kind of navigate them from that, and how do you even bring them back when that actually happens?
Man, it's the game we play. You might end up being posterized, you might be a meme, but at the highest level, it's the man in the arena. You guys are in there doing it for a reason because, people aren't willing to get their head knocked off, and I give love and credit to these men and women that decide to step up and make those 4 steps up that cage and get that cage door locked behind them. Because there's not a whole lot of people in the world that aren't willing to do what they do. So that's the risk we run, man. There's inherent risks in life that anything that we do. But when you do it at the highest level that these men and women are doing it at, we have here's Francis Ngannou goes out and drops Tyson Fury, and then you know what? Next time we're the nail against Anthony Joshua. It's unfortunate, but that's a product of who and what we are and the game that we play. So have a short mind, man. You got burned on a play. You got to get back in there, and we need you to lock down that side. So the hard part, I think, in comparison to football and MMA, is there's a lot of guys that will, you lose a fight, you don't fight again for maybe another 3 months, maybe 3 or 4 months. In football, hopefully it's not last game of the season, you have the next week. So you got to rebound pretty quick and have a short mind.
What's the frequency like for an up and coming fighter? What does the frequency of fights need to look like? And for a championship fighter, what does that tend to look like?
Frequency as far as like how many fights or camp wise, or
like how often should you be fighting?
Well, I think the sweet spot to me is anywhere between 3 to 4 times a year. But then there's guys that can get out of these fights early without a lot of damage. Man, make the most out of it. Maximize your ability to fight and make money while you can. And if you're doing it on short notice and getting those short notice fights, make sure you're getting a bump in your pay. Because, I'll tell you what, man, being around this game for a long time, and I love the UFC. I love these guys in MMA, but you got to get paid while you can and make as much money as you can while you're in the game. Because once it's gone, man, they don't think about you. You're out of sight, out of mind, and they don't give 2 craps about you after that. So I prefer anywhere from 3 to 4 times a year. And if you're a title fighter or you have the belt, that's when you really make your money, honestly, James, because you're getting those pay-per-view points, So we had guys that were, win the belt, try to get 3-4 fights in a year and maximize your pay-per-view rights.
What does training look like for a explain like a camp? Like what does a camp look like when you're getting prepared for a prize fight?
Sure. So usually we'll sit down with a fighter, and I'll sit down and we'll break out a schedule. Mondays usually we'll have a morning session. I'll use Danny Ige for an example. Like, so we'll have an individual session on a Monday, almost like you're going to your individual groups. We'll run, and I say routes. I run routes via pads, right? So pad routes. So almost like a 2-stem route as a receiver. You're running a 2-stem route. That'll be your meat and potatoes, and then we'll have all these different variations off of that 2-stem route. It might go post, we might go corner, we might curl, we might dig, whatever. And then so we'll usually do our route combinations specific to camp, and then what you do outside of camp I think is also very important. Like we talked about earlier, if you have holes in your game or there's things that we have to work on, that's really when you really want to work on those things is outside of camp. So when camp starts, maybe we can game plan or we can use it as an asset into our next fight. So usually morning practices will be individuals, and then team practices will be at like around 3:30, 4 o'clock here in Vegas. Then you have your strength and conditioning. You'll have your recovery time. We'll do cardio sessions. Man, there's a lot to it, but there's a method to the madness, and we try to break up your day to the point where we're not running you in the dirt on each practice. Some practices will be a little lighter, more detailed oriented, and then you'll have a harder practice that night, or vice versa, depending on morning or night.
Okay. What is so kind of piggybacking off of a stupid stupid take that Austin Rivers had, where he said he could take 30 guys from the NBA and they'll dominate the NFL, which I jokingly put, I might have made 30 basketball players my sophomore year in high school, like just from knocking people out.
Yeah.
Who are some guys from Florida State that you would think, you know what, that guy doesn't make it in the NFL. That guy might be a hell of an MMA player if there's any guys that you paid attention to?
I'll tell you one right now is Reggie Northrup. I know Reggie really
Oh,
well.
shout out to Reggie. He is holy shit.
Yeah, I know. I would say I know Reggie really well, but I know Reggie. We follow each other. We speak on Instagram. So this is funny. I'm out cornering a guy out in Florida. He's fighting in Orlando, and I walk in the back, and me being a Seminole, I'm like, holy shit, Reggie Northrup, what's up, bro? And he's like, holy shit, Eric Nixick, what's up, bro? Like, so we were geeking out with each other, and man, I'm a huge fan of what he's doing. I know he's still competing in football, but he's doing very, very well in MMA, man. He's a talent, and I've been watching his career, and so he's a guy that I think can make some noise as his MMA career progresses.
What's funny is he actually wrestled in high school, and he used to like fight guys. Like, talking to him, I actually trained him from when he was still trying to make it to the NFL, and then like I see him during COVID doing the fight night stuff, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, why are you trying to play football, man? Like this is clearly what you're supposed to be doing. Like, man, fuck football, man. Go do this, and obviously you still want to chase it or whatever and do those things, but he's definitely
good,
is a talent.
Yeah, he's good, man. I think guys that maybe aren't within MMA now, man. I would say Derwin James, just that physical aspect that Derwin is as a safety. I think he would be a good guy to have over in MMA. I say Anquan Bolden. I think Bolden would have been a stud. We got to train a bunch of NFL guys would come over and work with us. Max Crosby comes in and works with us. I remember Patrick Willis coming in and train with us, and I'll tell you what. If Patrick Willis wanted to make a career out of MMA, he would have been a stud. He was very good as well.
I got a chance to meet Max. I was at the Sports Illustrated golf tournament. It went to his nonprofit for saving pit bulls from bad homes. It was really, really cool. Again, but guy George asked, is punch power something you're born with, or is that something that you kind of develop with technique in the gym?
So great question. A little bit of both. Like Francis obviously has God-given knockout power, but the delivery mechanism is also important as well. And what I mean by that is are you falling off balance when you throw? Are you throwing from your arm reaching over opposed to throwing with my hips? So there's things I think you can develop to clean up. I wouldn't say that you're naturally God-given. This is some guys I know, like we got these Hawaiian guys in the gym, like, holy hell, they'll hit you. It's just different. Put your lights out. But with that being said, we also want to develop it into a technical side of things. So when Francis knocked out Jairzinho, it was a little wild, man. He was looping and throwing punches off his hip and throwing from different directions. And when it landed, the dude was out cold. But when you watch the difference between that fight and the Stipe fight, we cleaned everything up, kept straight line punches, his feet underneath him. And then when he threw that check hook to knock out Stipe, his hands and feet were in position. Those are the things I think are very important, is when you get guys, we call it falling over your skis. He's falling over his skis when he's throwing those punches. That's when you're going to get countered. So, developing that and making sure the guys can throw, but throw with their balance, I think is equally as important as guys who already have that knockout power.
Well, we're here with Eric. Eric's one of the top trainers in MMA, multiple champions, different weight classes, huge gym out of the Vegas area. We're here talking about, he's an FSU fan. We're talking about violence today and just overall the purity in it, and the correlations and things of that nature. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to hit them in the chat as we have them here for a few more minutes. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy getting ready. So what are some things that you do have lined up that you're about to start focusing in on in terms of fights?
Sure. Yeah. We got Sean Strickland. He'll be fighting June 1st out in New York, New Jersey. He's fighting Paulo Costa. that is, if we win that fight, we're right back into title contention. That's Sean right up there. We won the belt in Australia last September versus Izzy Adesanya. So he'll be fighting on that card. We have another guy, Roman Dolidze. He'll be on the card. And then June 8th, we'll head out to Louisville, Kentucky. We'll have 4 guys on that card out there. So we're super busy, man. It's one of those things. There's really no off season for us in MMA. You don't get a couple months off. We don't get that long vacation. The biggest thing for me, James, is like I got shoulder injuries and neck injuries and all these things, and you don't have time to ever have a surgery or anything to get work done. So I'm held together by duct tape and chewing gum.
Yeah, and then you still got to get in there and get active with these guys. So it ain't like it's tickling. Like I've actually held the bag for somebody or the gloves when they're punching. It doesn't tickle. Not when they're good. Like, all right, brings me to another point. There's one person you couldn't get me to wear that big old suit. You couldn't get me to wear those pads. I don't care if this man is 95 years old. The person who does that stuff with Mike Tyson does not get paid enough to do that. Because what if he's not precise that day? What if he misses?
Oh yeah.
And then some of those things, he's brushing your nose. And is there anybody that you've ever trained that you're just like, hey man, dude, if you slip, I'm going to shoot you?
Yeah, all the time, man. Francis, for sure. If Francis missed, I wouldn't be here telling that story, man. He would put me to sleep. But I've actually held pads for Mike Tyson before too. So I've been in that body shield and held pads for Mike when Mike was helping us get ready for Tyson Fury. So I got to hold pads for Mike Tyson and Francis Ngannou the same day. And it's a sight to be seen, man. Those guys are very, very good. They hit hard.
So I met Mike Tyson back in 2006, early 2006. I was actually in Vegas. They used to have a All-Star game, football All-Star game, the Las Vegas All-American Bowl, and he came to a Maxim party that I was at, and it was like I told somebody it was amazing conversations, incredibly intelligent guy. But I said meeting him was like seeing the prettiest pit bull, most ferocious pit bull that you've ever seen in your life. And it has no owner. There's nobody. It's not on a leash. It's just walking around, and you're like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Like I don't know what's happening right now. And it's again, I think he's awesome. But I'm a huge Tyson fan. But I also know that it go left at any given moment, and you have no idea why it goes left.
Dude, that is the best analogy you can possibly give on Iron Mike, man. Yeah, he's intense as they come, and it was an honor to be able to sit there and be a part of those training sessions, and just picking his brain and seeing his intensity, and putting Francis through these workouts that I know a lot of times Francis probably would have quit or said he was done, but because it was Mike putting him through it, he wouldn't have, So he was a valuable resource, and man, but I can feel that energy too. Like if this dude's gonna get pissed off, bro, it's gonna take a lot to hold this guy down, man. It's gonna be a rough night for all of us.
I don't want him mad at me, man. Like he did this. I forgot what it was. The interview where he was just like he was talking about I'm not that same person, but I miss him. And I feel like a bitch. And he's crying. I'm like, why? Why are we crying? What is going on? What is going on? What do you miss,
bro?
It's like, where is he? Like, is he still?
Oh man, yeah, that's a lot. That's heavy. You know what I mean? Like he thrived in that violence, and he loved it. I'm sure he misses that competition, and he's got it coming up, man. He's fighting Jake Paul, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Hopefully he's in shape and ready to go because everybody love to see him sleep that dude.
I for one would definitely. But what are your thoughts on the Pauls? Like, obviously it's working. People are getting paid.
For sure. 100%.
One of the things, some people are getting paid more money than they've ever gotten paid. But is this real? Is this more carny, circusy? Is he gonna really is Mike gonna really have the opportunity to knock this guy out? Like, what are your thoughts just on on all of that in general?
I think they're doing a great job, honestly. And they're training, and these guys are skilled fighters. These guys this isn't the WWE. They're in there putting in the work. I've seen it firsthand. And I enjoy seeing people succeed. I'm not a hater. if you're helping more people make more money, you're bringing attention and eyes to the sport, and you're doing it through hard work, then I'm all for that. And look, he's gotten a lot of former MMA fighters paid. And so good on him. And anytime I've ever seen him or been around him, he's been nothing but respectful. So he has my respect as well. He's going in there, stepping in the boxing ring to fight Mike Tyson. Good on him, man. So I'm all for it, man. And I think that he's got the skill set to beat Mike. I think he's younger, he's faster. The cardio thing, I think, is going to be the biggest element. Is how much gas Mike Tyson will have in the tank and how long he can last and survive with a guy who's fleet of foot that can move around and do some good stuff. So it'll be it's a lose to me for Jake Paul. Like if you knock out Uncle Mike, dude, everybody's gonna fucking hate you. So
sure.
You
brought up again in that you said he was respectful. How much? And I never really I don't watch a ton of the UFC like build up to the fights. I do know I've seen some of them. They're funny, just like boxing. How much of it is like, all right, we got to act to sell the pay-per-view clicks, or is it? Or I get it. I have to. I don't hate you, but I have to hate you in order for me to do what I have to do. How much of it is staged? How much of it is, these people might not actually really, really like each other? Because that's kind of the only thing that gets kind of annoying to me is the shtick. You can't, we know you don't hate it. Right. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think you can be buddy with somebody. I don't think I can be friends with somebody who's about to knock me out.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think a lot of it does kind of hinge on if these are pay-per-view buys, because if there are pay-per-view buys and more people are buying the card, that there's sweat equity behind your work. If you're getting paid a flat amount and it doesn't matter who watches and who doesn't, it doesn't matter where you're out in the card, a lot of times you don't see a lot of hatred back and forth. But when it's a big pay-per-view and it's predicated on the amount of buys, that's when you see a little bit of steam behind it and a little bit more build up. I've had fighters that I know that are, they'll write the other guy and say, hey man, we're going to, this press conference, I'm going to say this, and we're going to get a little bit after this, and you get me with this, and blah, 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 to kind of sell the fight. I've seen that. And so it does happen. You're absolutely right. But when you're later on or you're a prelim fighter, a lot of those guys, they don't need to have the reason to hate you. It's more a level of competition because your pay is going to stay the same. And so there's no reason to hate the guy. Gotcha.
That's why I was curious today. I'm like, it's got to be a little bit. I get it. The Muhammad Ali approach, got to have some showmanship. Sure. Sell the fight. Somebody's got to be the guy that everybody wants to see get knocked out, and somebody's got to be the underdog or the hero for that moment.
And a lot of the analytics now, this day and age, like the analytics are the things that they look at, right? The UFC will look at, hey, who's moving the needle and these clicks and things like that. So the more you can kind of keep your analytics up, I think the more that you're going to be thrust into a bigger position or a main event role or those spots. So all of it can be good to some capacity, but the guys that I coach in corner, for the most part, they're all pretty quiet guys, other than old Sean Strickland right here. He's a loudmouth. So,
and the quiet guys are the terrifying guys.
Yeah,
those are the guys. Those are the guys that like Greg Jones is a quiet guy. I can't tell you the story. I can't tell you. I can tell you the story if we ever link up. But there's an amazing story about Greg Jones and another behemoth in Florida State history. And just know, Greg got the better of the guy, and the guy was talking to Greg, and Greg just don't do all that talking, and Greg just. It was a short conversation once hands got involved. I can tell you that much.
Bro, I don't know how
he's the guy who, if he was in MMA, he would be great.
Give me Greg Jones right now. I'll take Greg Jones right now. When he forearm shivered that safety from North Carolina, was it Reed? Right?
Dexter Reed, yeah.
Dexter Reed.
I was in on that play. I was blocking on that play, and I got it. I blocked, boom. So like he's down the field, so I don't need to run down there. I'm just sitting there watching. I'm like, yo, all right, that's the safety we were talking about. He's supposed to be the hardest hitting safety. And then, oh my God. Like his helmet was buckled.
Yeah.
When it came off. Like, so it was still buckled. So his head went through the chin strap and it landed, buckled up, and like he picked it up and had to take it off and try to put it back on. Like,
how about wasn't it Chris Davis was like blocking for him downfield, and like Chris Davis was like a innocent bystander getting hit from
if
behind.
Chris Davis wasn't in the way, he would still be in orbit. Like he would have gone up into the air higher, but because Chris was stock blocking, he landed. The guy landed on top of Chris. It was amazing to see that.
You know what's crazy is that when he ran over Sean Taylor, it doesn't get as much play as that should get, right? Like even that.
Yeah, Sean. I was in on that play too. The Sean thing. Sean got him when we played Miami at home in the rainstorm.
I was there for that game.
Yeah, we were on the sideline. He caught Greg on the sideline. Greg could have scored. Greg was one-on-one. It was only Sean Taylor. Greg goes to the left. He scores. Stiff arm Sean. Dribbles Sean to the ground. Greg wanted Sean to pay. And to Sean Taylor, God rest the dead's credit, Sean, a lot of people would have done something to miss. But right. Sean knew, he accepted what was about to happen to him. And what he said, I'm not going to make this worse by letting him truck me and score. I'm going to grab something. And he's coming down with it.
Yes.
And that happened to him. But that was Greg has some hits, man. But when Greg hit Dexter Reed, I became a better fullback. Because everybody, I promise you, I wasn't that good to where people were where I was picking up all these blocks. But if the middle linebacker knew he came and tried to fill, he did his job. Right. There was a lot of filling going on when there could have been some tackling going. And guys made a lot of business decisions. And
I love that.
As I like to tell people, lie to your pastor. You ain't got a lot of me. I know what was going on, man. I wouldn't have wanted to be hit too by Greg.
And that was the Stanford Samuels Roscoe Parrish hit the same game in the rain game, right?
Oh man, Boosie hit Stanford Samuels. Boosie, that's what we call before the rapper Little Boosie. I tell people the only Boosie I acknowledge is Stanford Samuels because that's what we called him. Don't know why he was called Boosie. Came in, everybody called him Boosie, so that's what you don't pick your nickname in the locker room.
Yeah,
they give you a nickname. And that's your nickname. So Roscoe came, it was pouring down rain. All of us were soaking wet. When I tell you he hit him so hard, if you go look at the video for half a second, Roscoe Parrish is completely dry. All the water just came right off of him. And then when he landed, he got soaked again. He was in the hospital for 3 days. Internal bleeding. Like he almost died.
Dang.
Like it was crazy.
Dude,
like it's amazing how violent the game was.
Bro, Stanford
he get arrested.
Is in jail. He's in jail. He's in jail for that hit. Bro.
Attempted murder. That's an attempted murder charge in today's game.
That was that's the first Florida State game. That was my first Florida State game I've ever been to.
That's a hell of a game. We got to get you to Tallahassee, man. I don't know. What is your schedule like? When do you know what your fall schedule is like?
Oh, dude, I never know. But the moment I have a gap, this is every year for me. Anytime I have a gap where I know, I'll always look at the schedule and see when I can get out to Tallahassee or if they're on the West Coast. You know, I made it to the 2014 National Championship game. I was there when we beat Auburn. I was there the next year when we played Oregon and lost to Mariota and that team. Flew out to Boulder when we played Colorado out there. You know, anytime that they come West Coast, I'm definitely going to make the game. But I love getting out to Tallahassee, man. You know, with the Bullwinkles a few times, spent a month there one night, you know.
I was at Bullwinkles for the spring game. I was out there. I hadn't been there in quite some time. It's still crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's my spot, man. Loved it.
but yeah, man, so it was cool, man. Well, I appreciate you. It's a little later in the evening here. Heck, y'all, the one thing about the West Coast, the only thing that would make me want to move out there is that I feel like I could get so much more accomplished. Like, because I don't mind waking up early, but like I can only imagine being able to watch football games while I'm eating breakfast.
Yeah.
And like then the nighttime primetime game is over, and then I can still go out. Like when I'm in Vegas, when I was in Vegas for the Super Bowl, I was partying hard because I'm used to being someone else, and like the sun, I'm used to being in bed, but the sun is still out, so I can still go get some extra hours in. So, but would love to get you to Tallahassee, man. I gotta get your address so I can send you a cap, man. I appreciate you coming in here and explaining the game to us a little bit, man. And it's always great chopping it up with Knowles, man.
Oh, bro, love it, man. Thank you, brother. And we'll talk to you soon, man.
Yes, sir, man. I'll holler at you, man. You got my guy Eric here. Just dope. This is what we like to do. Again, you guys got a chance to talk to a guy who creates champions. And that's what we do here on Den Media Group, Big Games BS. Remember, guys, we're trying to get to that 6,000. Please go like this, share it. We're going to break this down into a bunch of different shorts so that you guys can digest it. And outside of that, man, I hope you guys have a better Thursday than I've had. I got my ass whooped today. Like we got out of hand. We were fighting hard, but then my Pilgrims lost. We got mercy rule. So but we didn't have our starting face-off guy, and our starting goalie is good. Goalie's banged up, and we got into some trouble, and the game got out of hand real quick. But we still made it to the Final Four, and we'll be back. So we won't have Big Games BS tomorrow morning. Or we will have it probably Saturday sometime. So come check us out. We're still trying to get 6,000 subs. Want to make sure we get to that. And, outside of that, man, appreciate you guys for chopping it up with me. And I'll see you guys next time.